Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast for our final segment of the day, where we are wrapping up our previews of the NFC East teams. If you missed our other three, definitely be sure to check us out on either the YouTube page for the GSMC Sports Podcast or the GSMC Sports Network or the GSMC Podcast Network. But today we have the final team of the group in the Washington Commanders. And a lot of turnover for the Commanders headed into this upcoming season, starting at the top with head coach Dan Quinn, who they hired, former defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys. And I think that Quinn is a little bit of a bad rep, maybe just because of the fact that the Cowboys defense obviously fell apart during that Green Bay game. Some of the decisions in terms of playing really soft coverage and allowing these Packers young wide receivers to run around a little bit more ended up in a very ugly situation for the Cowboys, and the game was basically over before the Dallas offense even really got a chance to fully establish themselves. But if you take that sort of out of mind, Dan Quinn has been a good defensive coordinator for the Cowboys for years, and while I wasn't blown away with the signing by any means, I think that he can be a fine culture setter for Washington this upcoming season. And it's a lot of turnover, like I mentioned, as at the quarterback position as well. Despite Sam Howell flashing a little bit of something, maybe, probably not all that tangible, but thought that Howell had his moments. But ultimately, they decided that second overall pick, they didn't have a choice but to draft a new quarterback. So they end up taking Jayden Daniels second overall out of LSU. I think that I'm going to hold off on sort of, writing off Jayden Daniels by any means. We have to see what he looks like in the NFL. I am a little bit skeptical of what the upside for Daniels looks like, as he is a little bit of an older prospect, and I think that there's a very clear, he has the arm talent, he has the athleticism. The issue is sort of the extreme precision, and then also he needs to be a lot more mature in terms of taking hits, because at LSU he was setting himself up to get bodied on a number of instances. And it's possible. We've seen the likes of Josh Allen sort of have his welcome to the NFL hits and learn from that. But the difference is that Josh Allen has a lot more size to him. Jayden Daniels is a pretty skinny guy overall, so I think that he needs to do a better job of protecting himself when he makes this leap to the NFL. It's very much doable. It's probably one of the easier skills to sort of pick up on inherently, but something that I'm definitely looking at with Jayden Daniels. Not super positive on him, but I'm definitely open to, being talked into Jayden Daniels as a pro prospect. So definitely looking forward to seeing what he has. This is an offense that they bring in a lot of veterans, and not just the offense, but in general. We'll get into the defense as well, but a lot of experience. Now, unfortunately, experience can also come with maybe players that are past their prime. And that's what I would say the case is for Austin Ekeler and Zach Ertz. Now, while I don't love Ekeler in 2024 as a lead back, you also have Brian Robinson in the backfield as well to be a little bit of a reliable 1-2 duo, especially in the pass game. I think that Robinson has a pretty bright future, and Ekeler, we know for years, has been a solid pass blocker and has been a solid receiver as well. So I think that the Commanders did a fine job. Ultimately, you look at the weapons around them, Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, they're good options as well, but I do think that, look at a Zach Ertz and an Austin Ekeler. These aren't franchise pieces. The Commanders do still have a little bit of a ways to go. I did like the addition of Tyler Biadasz, former center with the Cowboys, that this is an offensive line that, to some degree, it was Sam Howell running for his life last year. Sam Howell also held on to the ball too long a number of times, so I think it was 65 sacks allowed last year. Not good whatsoever, but also part of that is a little bit of an error on the quarterback perspective. So I think that the overall pass blocking numbers are probably going to be at least slightly better for this upcoming season. So we'll have to see about that. But overall, you look at their numbers offensively from last season, pretty bottom of the pack across the board. Now, the pass numbers definitely up because the Commanders found themselves in some tough situations where they were having to pass their way back into games. I think that ultimately it's a fine offense. The offensive line is not, ready to be fully intact. I'm sure that's probably going to be the next direction that they go in on offense, to try and put some better linemen in front of Jayden Daniels. Again, I think the receivers are passable. I think the running backs are passable, but I do have some concerns with the offensive line. Looking at the defense, that's where, again, they bring in a lot of veterans, where they signed Bobby Wagner, they signed Frankie Louvu, Clennon Farrell, former first-round pick from the Raiders, giving a little bit of a fly on him as well. Dante Fowler Jr., Jeremy Chin. So these are all names that are probably going to be starting for the Commanders that are coming from other places heading into this year. And it's a new system anyways because Dan Quinn is now in town. So I think that it's probably fine in terms of a consistency of who you have, and a cohesion on that note. But, I think that the front line is pretty good overall. Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen are both in, all-pro caliber players in their own rights. They bring in Jerzon Newton, who can also be a big-time game changer. They ended up drafting him, and I think he went in the second round, but very possibly going to be the best defensive tackle out of the 2024 class. You get him in the second round, so pretty good value there, I'd argue. But outside of that, there's definitely question marks. I like Dorrance Armstrong. I think that's a good signing, another former Cowboy. But outside of that, I think there's a lot to be desired on the defensive side of the field. And you look at the numbers, 32nd in yards allowed, 32nd in scoring, worst pass offense in the NFL. It was pretty bad last year. Now, they have, I'd say, some intriguing pieces of the secondary where Emmanuel Forbes Jr. had a bad rookie season. It was not a good rookie season, I'll put it that way. And that, maybe there's some upside with him. Definitely not writing him off after 1 year, but out of the corners that were drafted last year, Forbes feels like one of the weaker ones. I like the draft pick of Mike Sandstrill a lot, though. Nickelback out of Michigan. I think that's a nice pickup for them, but it's a defense that definitely has a lot of room to grow from next year, but I think that this is probably going to be a little bit of a 2-year project for Dan Quinn to piece this all together. And the one thing I'd be a little worried about is what happens if some of these contracts that they just went out and spent on, if they don't live up to expectations. I think that they could get into a little bit of a financial problem. But pretty middle of the pack schedule, or strength of schedule, where you look, they're playing the NFC South, which you would think has a number of winnable games there, but the Commanders, again, I just think that ultimately this is going to be a little bit of a rebuilding year, and this season is going to be contingent on what does Jayden Daniels look like. You bring in Cliff Kingsbury as the new offensive coordinator. Is he able to sort of revive his NFL career by any means? Just spent last year, was it with USC, I believe? So making his return to the NFL, he hasn't necessarily proven all that much in the NFL, I don't think, at least just yet. So I think that this is a little bit of a wait-and-see season for the Commanders, and it's going to be mostly about internal development and evaluation. So ultimately, I have them winning about 4 games this season. I think that they are going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL, and that might not even be the worst thing in the world, that, them, and you look at the other records I've given out there, you look at them, the Giants, the Patriots, these are all teams that, I mean, the Giants are probably more so going to be in the quarterback market, but the Patriots and the Commanders, they both take a quarterback with their first-round selections this year. Next year, it's probably going to be about offensive line and or a weapon. I'd say more so on the offensive line front for the Commanders in this case. But let me know if you are feeling, any more types of optimism about this season for the Commanders. It's not that I think that they are a bad roster by any means. I don't know overall here about the fit of everything, and I think that there are going to be some ugly moments for the Commanders. But again, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments section. That is all the time we have for today, though. Thank you very much for tuning into the GSMC Sports Podcast. Thank you to the GSMC Sports Network for allowing us to host this show. Remember to like, follow, subscribe wherever you keep up with us. And we will see you same time as always on Monday afternoon, 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern. Have a great weekend. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet. Damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go.